The member's calling. Okay, well, can you speak? I can't hear the member.
Mr. Speaker.
It's much better. I call the
phone helps. Sorry, I should use my theatre voice.
I call the honourable member Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As stated by my colleague Holly Walker, the Green Party will not be supporting the Child Support Amendment Bill. And I'll now just talk in a little bit more detail about some of our concerns, which relate, for me anyway, primarily to the context that child support operates within. So child support is undoubtedly an important issue for women and children in New Zealand. The most recent estimates are that around 1 in 2 mothers have spent some time as a sole parent by the time they reach 50. And that 1/3 of children have lived with a sole mother for some time by the time that they're 17. And according to the Families Commission research, we know that for many receiving parents, the amount they receive is considered to be too little to meet the needs of their child. And in 2009, 90% of sole parent families had incomes below the median household income for all households with or without children. This bill, sadly, while closing some loopholes, which will hopefully increase payments to some primary caregivers and their children, also opens others, which will actually further reduce incomes to a significant number, and this for us is completely unacceptable. If child support payments reflected the high cost of child rearing and were paid regularly and frequently, and were in a context of acknowledging power dynamics in relationships, they could help to reduce child poverty. Sadly, this bill does not do that. Now, again, just mention the decrease, as noted by my colleague Holly, of a father who currently might pay $7,400 per annum, who under this regime would only be required to pay $2,600 per annum. A massive reduction of 64% in child support liability. That's a reduction going to that child. So reducing the threshold for time spent parenting also doesn't take into account that the primary financial burden for healthcare costs, for education, for uniform costs, for sports activities, for extracurricular activities, usually remain with the primary caregiver. And a parent having the child for the weekend usually won't be responsible for those costs. And I also have to address in this speech that New Zealand fathers, and this is backed up by evidence, have a long history of not paying child support, paying too little and paying erratically. This bill seems to support in its part, at least, the view that child support should be less onerous because liable parents resent paying it. This rationale appears to have neglected the unavoidable fact that child support is for the support of the child, and reducing payments will increase child poverty. The culture of avoiding paying child support needs to be challenged directly. And again, and I'm going to be a broken record in this House, this bill also ignores the context of domestic violence in this country. Women's Safety Survey conducted in '96 found that 70% of separated women had experienced some form of domestic violence. And we know our courts are used, and custody is used as a tool of abuse. We have New Zealand research that shows that while custody applications based on assertions of parental rights appear to be accepted at face value by our courts, it is too well documented that family courts often treat applications concerned about violence, abuse and coercive control with a degree of scepticism that's unwarranted, leaving children and their mothers in highly dangerous situations. And Auckland University research has shown that women sometimes feel fearful and under pressure to agree to care arrangements that they didn't believe were in their children's best interests. This bill, as it stands, increases the opportunity for abusive fathers to use the law against their ex-partner. And I really would just say to Labour and National that if we're relying on the Select Committee process, we're not recognising the difficulty of speaking to that experience of abuse. It is much easier for the father to talk about his outrage than it is for a woman who's been a victim of violence. So we would suggest at least that the review of the family court be responded to before this bill goes further.
I call the honourable member Mike Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.